think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
Midsommer is the perfect breakup movie that uses horror as a backdrop for all of the internal atrocities that are happening within Dani's life. The grief she experiences, her codependency and limerence, and also that deep desire for belonging and community after she's left in this vulnerable state. Things that are very raw and relatable. I'll always say that yes, if we are going off of Air Aster's amazing works, Hereditary is like perfect. It's the perfect horror movie. But I would say that Midsommer just lands that punch that Hereditary for me kind of missed. And I think it's just personal taste. I'm not favoring one or the other or saying one is better or one's worse. You could tell that so much heart went into this movie. So Midsommer takes place during a summer solstice, which is a celebration of the longest day of the year and just making it through the harsh and long Scandinavian winters. Ragnar Persson, the Swedish artist who illustrated the murals within Midsommer, explains them as a script for the movie. Persson took inspiration from Halsinger. I'm gonna presume that I pronounced that incorrectly. Halsinger. I don't know. I'm sorry. But Persson, the illustrator, took inspiration from the Halsinger murals, which were traditionally used as a means of passing information through generations about the festival and to celebrate regeneration and fertility. When asked about the fire motif that pops up in the illustrations, Persson says, "The fire is really central to the story. The fire is sacred, so it can never go out. Maybe it's society as a whole. It's a community, and you have to keep feeding it so it carries on burning." When Ragnar is told that his illustrations are dark, he responds, "Maybe it's the Swedish within me. We only have 3 months of sunlight and then it's dark again." Ragnar gives us valuable insight into why the Hargas treasure their traditions. Since sunlight is limited to a fleeting moment, the fire motif continues because it is what keeps the Hargas going. If there is no May Queen or summer solstice, what would be the point of their civilization? Although we perceive their traditions as frenzied and cruel and random, it's actually a controlled space for them to bring all of their agony, trauma, and shame to light and to finally burn it all away. Midsommer is very intentional. These characters' lives are drawn out meticulously by Air Aster, and he shows us what happens before we, as the viewer, experience it. As somebody who's dealt with grief from a very young age, there's something quite novel about watching Midsommer. Maybe it's just that feeling of like being seen and that your expression of grief isn't singular. I think a lot of people actually find community within Midsommer, the film itself, and just talking about it because it is just that powerful. And because of how powerful it is, it becomes comforting. Grief comes at night and it comes in the daylight. It knows no bounds. But rituals and traditions make grief easier to deal with, which is why the Hargas are such a alluring group in the first place. And it's also why people turn to like religions and cults in the end. Structure and community are there to heal us, but once used in the wrong setting or the wrong intentions, it can be used to actually hurt us. So the first part of the mural is the echoing of Midsommer. There is a skull spitting snow upon a family. The family is connected by an umbilical cord. The cord comes out of the parents, passing through the daughter's belly buttons, Dani's cord is cut by a skeleton, which severs Dani from her family, showing that they'll be separated by death. We learn that Dani's sister, who is pretty mentally unstable, offs the household with carbon monoxide. So I've got the mural right here. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. But one thing that I noticed about Dani and the way that she's presented in the mural is that she looks like a princess in a fairy tale who's just about to go on this grand adventure. But there's also something just really off about it. So let's move on to the second segment of the mural. So we see a mysterious figure who is obviously meant to be Pelle. Pelle is sat atop a tree and he's writing down some notes, and he's just watching as Christian tries to comfort a distraught, grief-stricken and depressed Dani. And he also has his fingers crossed behind his back because he's a liar. Maybe I'm being too harsh. I think it's just more so to symbolize that he doesn't have good intentions when it comes to Dani, and it's just a relationship that they've both been in for just far too long.
I've been wanting out of this stupid relationship for like a year now.
Like, it's gotten to a point where Christian is on autopilot mode, even as Dani's family has died. If he was somebody that cared about her, he would show it. He would have been there for her, not just to hug her and to hold her and to say the right thing, but to actually grieve and feel empathetic for her. I think the thing is with Christian is that he's very image obsessed. He wants people to see him as like a good guy. He wants to be seen as smart, as intelligent, as attractive, you know, as like most young guys do, as most young people do. You would be seen and feel like a piece of shit if you just left somebody that you'd been with for, I think they were together for like 4 years. I do understand like his reluctancy to leave Dani, but he should have been setting some boundaries. He is very porous and easily influenced. That kind of tells you everything there is to know about Christian. He is just a coaster. He coasts through his life, and he coasts through his relationship with Dani, and he coasts straight into his death. So within this second segment, we do see Pelle looking down at Dani and Christian. I'm not sure how long he's been in that group for, but seems to be like they're all like pretty buddy. Pelle is an outsider. Obviously, he's Swedish, he's not from the United States, but he doesn't really act like any of the other guys in the group. He's actually the first person who shows Dani any sort of empathy and asks her if she's all right.
I was so very sorry to hear about what happened.
I'm sorry.
He seems to try and like open her up to talking about these things. He does put himself in a position of being just very different from these guys, and I think that's a way to kind of sell himself and set himself apart from Christian. I think he's observing and writing down all of the things that Christian is doing wrong, and he's like, right, I'm not gonna do that. Contrary to the cold winter open, we are greeted with Swedish sunshine, vast valleys, and of course magic mushrooms. Dani ends up taking the mushroom due to peer pressure. Air Aster doesn't shy away from showing us Dani's perspective while she's on drugs. The camera slowly examines Dani, from her peaceful facial expressions to her hand which has begun to sprout grass. The sound design reaches out and immerses you into Dani's mind. Her breathing and the swaying of the leaves are blended seamlessly together. Nature is given new life until Mark disturbs Dani by mentioning family. Dani jolts up and meanders away from the group. She approaches a new group. They appear to laugh at Dani, suggesting that a positive experience has become traumatic. Everything good in Dani's life sours, just like all of her relationships. Ouch! I didn't mean for that to sound so mean, but it's actually just true. Specifically her relationship with Christian, which neither are willing to let go of. As I said, they're both in a very codependent relationship. But at the end of the day, they have trapped themselves within it. And Dani's parents' death did not cause their relationship to have this rift. It's just that her parents passing was like the inciting incident to just get everything kicking off. Christian, as I said, he's just not able to like emotionally fulfill Dani. He's just a yes man, but he doesn't mean any of it. A lot of people do describe Christian as a gaslighter. I don't think that his actions are intentional and like as if he's going out of his way to purposefully hurt Dani. No, he's actually going out of his way to purposefully stay with Dani, but this is not what he wants. You cannot contain a person in a relationship. The thing is with gaslighters and manipulators, they do play with your sense of time, your sense of self, your understanding of the world. They don't tell you the truth. And whilst Christian is not upfront, he's also not intentionally do these things because there's a more significant purpose. And that's where we come back into Pelle. Pelle is very much so focused on indoctrinating Dani. He needs Dani to be a part of the Harga. And he even illustrates a picture of Dani as the May Queen. What's like really sad about this scene is that he's like the only person who remembers her birthday. Christian doesn't remember her birthday, but Pelle does. And so why is Dani the May Queen? The May Queen does represent fertility and nature, which is pretty standard stuff, but when we go beyond that, Dani loses all ties to her life. She's just in a time of her life where she's very easy to influence. In her like early 20s, she has no family, no structure, no stability. She's grieving. She has nobody that actually gives a damn about her. So she's like ripe for the picking. That description tends to be what a lot of cult leaders tend to go for when it comes to their new recruits. And Pelle also has a pretty similar story as Dani, where his parents had been off in a fire and he was also adopted into the Harga community. So he was also ripe for the picking. He was a young boy who had a sister, lost his parents, now has to raise his sister. Here comes this community. It is a cycle of abuse. I think he targets Dani because he sees her within himself, right? They share a very similar story. And as I said, she's in her early 20s, which is considered to be like the Midsommer of your life. And another part of this that I don't see people talk about, or at least I haven't seen anyone address as much, is the fact that she is white, blonde, and has blue eyes. So I'm not saying that the Hargas are necessarily like white supremacists, but it's pretty pronounced that all of the people of color, and there's like 3 of them, are axed off. It's pretty clear that when you look around the room, pretty much everybody here is blonde, has blue eyes at the very least. Even Christian, blonde, blue eyes. Christian and Dani are both used, well, Christian especially is used for breeding, and then he's discarded. I don't know if you guys have seen this new documentary called The Man with 1,000 Children, but for a lot of people out there, having a child with blonde hair and blue eyes is like the pinnacle of success. This is the best outcome that they could have ever hoped for. And that is also present in the Harga community, but it's present within many communities throughout the West, and it's still a very common practice that we see to this day where people want to have blonde, blue-eyed babies. We see Pelle playing the flute, so he's obviously meant to be like a piper type of character who is weaving stories and singing songs, sweet nothings into everybody's ears, trying to get them all in the right place. And Mark has the gestures hat, which is symbolism for his foolish, pugnacious, and perverted nature.
And don't forget about all of the beautiful Swedish women you'll meet in June.
Okay, guys.
This man makes constant remarks about sleeping with all types of women. You know that he just doesn't have game. One important scene is when Mark is checking out one of the girls and Pelle says that they're playing Skin the Fool. Mark's destructive behavior hits its peak once he urinates on an ancient tree. I guess it's also a commentary on like these American tourists who go to communities and just do these things and think that they can get away with it and there will be no punishment for it. You kind of start to like understand the Hargas because you're like, well, this American guy has just come over and pissed on their tree, which to them contains all of their ancestors. That's pretty messed up, and so you can kind of understand why they would be angry. So once again, with the manipulation tactics, this movie is manipulating the audience as well. It starts off with like a small thing, something that you can like, it's drastic, but you can understand it in horror movie logic, right? Somebody trespasses, they commit a sin, and then they get punished for it pretty drastically. So it starts off with Mark, and then it does quickly progress over to Josh. So in the mural, Josh is carrying several books. He is the scholar of the group and he's actually the friend of Pelle. His story is the pursuit of knowledge, and that ends up destroying him after he sneaks into the oracle's house and takes photo of some sacred runes. He does this after being told not to, so once again he commits a grave sin and transgresses the Harga's wishes, and he's punished for it by somebody who is wearing his friend's face. The Harga community wants to separate Christian and Dani from their friends because it just makes them easier to control, as I said, and Christian comparatively just shows zero concern for anybody. At this point he has been drugged, I'm not gonna lie, so it makes sense, but he shows zero concern for his friends because all he can think about is Maja, who is Pelle's younger sister. How old is she? Because she looks young to me, I'm sorry, how old is she? Anyways, she attempts to seduce Christian, and my question to you guys is, Pelle and Maja have been groomed in this community to think certain ways and to hold up their rituals and traditions, but do you think that Maja actually fancied Christian, thought he was cute, or do you think that she's just doing the right thing because this is what Harga women need to do? I need to have a baby, I need to be a breeder, you know, I need to be submissive and breedable. Anyways, do you think that's the reason, or maybe it's a bit of both? So, as we approach the end of the mural, Pelle teaches the group that the members of the Harga's lives end at 72. The eldest woman in the group steps forward and jumps. Her death is fast and painless, but still shocking to watch. The man jumps off, but injures himself pretty badly. When I first watched it, I thought that the crowd was like booing at the fact that he didn't himself properly. It was like, oh damn, that's pretty savage. But looking back at it, this was the first scene where we see the Harga doing their imitation thing. I saw this couple as another like correlation to Dani and Christian's assimilation into the group. Dani plunges herself deep into the world of the Harga and is consumed by it, hence why the woman has a clean death. Christian struggles to find his footing, which is why the man who jumps off breaks his leg because of the impact. The man is by the community for failing to aim correctly. It shows us that Christian's goals are scattered. Where he should be following Dani's lead, he misses. After Maja places a love rune under Christian's bed, he asks the Harga community about incest. He's informed that outsiders must be invited in so that they don't breach the incest taboo. The couples are chosen by the elders, which explains why Christian and Dani are broken up. Maja takes the role of the Scarlet Woman. With her red hair and gown and her fiery gaze, she's used to lure Christian. She bakes a pie for Christian which has her downstairs hair in it, as well as a drink that contains her menstrual blood. Upon finding this out, Christian once again just barely reacts to it. I'm not gonna lie, if I found this out, I would probably throw up, but he's just like, oh, was that pubic hair? Oh, okay. All right, mate. I mean, he is under a love spell, so I guess he kind of likes it. I don't know. Christian's disposition is like very laid back and blasé. He's just quite a disengaged person. I think in comparison to Dani, who is actually like relatively proactive within her life, because trust me, if I had experienced the level of grief and loss that she had, I think the last thing that I would want to do is go to Sweden just to like take my mind off of it, you know? I think that shows that she wants to do things in her life in order to better herself. So now we move on to the last portion of the mural, where they get high and they run around, and whoever is the last woman standing is the May Queen. What an interesting way to choose somebody. That could very easily be rigged. During the ceremony, I think it's Maja who's like the first one who falls down. And so once she falls down, she realizes that Dani is very distracted, and so she takes Christian, which is why this entire moment is just very orchestrated from the beginning. So she takes away Christian and he's also tripping balls. Let's go back to Dani, who is the last woman standing and is finally crowned as the May Queen. So she's given this beautiful, vibrant flower crown, and one of the flowers looked like a beating heart. I don't know if that was intentional or just like another thing to show that she's like really high, or maybe to symbolize that the nature is alive. I just thought that was pretty cool. And she ends up being kissed by Pelle. So she ascends onto this podium like a Christ figure. The semi-circular crown looks like a halo in this moment as well. Back to Christian. This is a pretty serious scene. It is an R-word scene. It's pretty damn bad and creepy. And why is that lady... what is she doing? Can you get in the scene? Christian has to make a baby with Maja, but once he starts to like calm down, he bolts out of the barn and he discovers Josh's leg, and he then goes into the little greenhouse and he discovers Simon, and he is drugged and placed into the infamous bear suit. He is paralyzed, and this was a great symbol for his life and just him as a person. But I also think with the bear suit, it's interesting that like outwardly he seems like this big, strong, tough guy and like an enemy, like a virile animal that's just there to attack, when in reality he's just a person who has his own traumas and is paralyzed by his own fear and complacency and cowardice. And I thought that was what the bear suit symbolized. They set the barn on fire. We see Dani solidified as part of the Harga, because now there is absolutely nothing holding her back from being a part of this community. What I find to be like such a sad aspect of this ending is that we do know what comes next. A May Queen is crowned, I think, annually, so every summer solstice. I think it might be a new one. I'm not too sure. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But I think what this tells us is that Dani is just being used. After she's been used for breeding, are they going to have much use for her anymore? What is her role going to be in this community? How much power does she actually have? Who is actually looking out for Dani? Because these people have now embedded themselves into her life, into her sense of being. And I don't think that this is something that Dani will ever find herself escaping, because if she couldn't step out of a codependent relationship, how is she going to step out of a cult?
Everything is in context. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
I think the realization settles in right at the end, but we don't get to see what she realizes. So that's where like the movie just plays with your mind quite a lot, and I love that. There are just so many like theories and ways that you can analyze it, but what I'm trying to say is that Midsommer is secular. So whatever happened to Dani, they're going to have to fit that role with the next person. That's just part of their religion. They have to keep regenerating, they have to keep that fire burning, and the way they do that is through their tradition of crowning the May Queen and also breeding and having children. That's the end of the Midsommer video. The lighting has changed quite a bit. My hair has probably changed quite a bit, but it's fine, we move. I'd just like to say thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear what your guys' opinions are on Midsommer. What's your favorite aspect of Midsommer? Bye!